Around the year 1150, two strange children appeared in the English village of Woolpit in Suffolk. Woolpit or Wolfpit is an ancient English village named literally after a pit designed for channeling and capturing wild wolves so that the humans can domesticate and occasionally eat them.
Surprise!
Wild wolves haven't been there in England for centuries, so yeah, that's how old it is. Now, there were many strange things about this appearance of these children, and as we will discover, lots of odd theories designed to explain their appearance. You see, the children were speaking gibberish to each other and appeared very nervous. They wore strange clothes, not typical of the time, and spoke with strange words that the villagers just didn't understand. And so, the children only communicated with each other. The children also appeared so suddenly that many villagers thought that they were either fallen angels, fairies, or aliens. And this isn't a totally mad idea either, because these children weren't like normal children. Aside from their weird clothes and strange language, their skin was green. The children appeared to be orphans, since no parents ever arrived to collect or claim them, and so the villagers themselves took them in and cared for them. They may have been green, but they were quite clearly children after all. It's easy to think that this is nothing more than a fairy tale or a made-up folk tale, an urban myth or utter nonsense conflated over centuries of stories being passed down across the generations by drunken boasting down the local pub, maybe? But it's not. There's plenty of evidence, including multiple written accounts, that it really did happen. A monk named Ralph of Cogg's Hall, a nearby abbey, wrote of the appearance of the children and documented how they seemed to have otherworldly properties. According to Ralph, the children were taken to the home of Richard de Calne, an English squire and the most important person in the local area, responsible for the villages of East Anglia. Richard offered the children food, but they refused to eat anything. When they eventually could persuade the children to try things, they apparently ate straight off the ground like dogs. Now, how the villagers found out this is unclear, but I'm guessing that there was probably a fair amount of fear surrounding the green children, who refused to eat anything and everything that they were offered until they were presented with a pile of raw beans, which they ate keenly. Now, it's unknown why this boy and this girl had such green skin, but it's assumed that perhaps it had something to do with their diet. Many modern day investigators suggested that the children themselves belong to a strange humanoid race whose skin is capable of photosynthesis. Personally, I think that's unlikely. Now, after some time of acclimatising the children to the life in Woolpit, the children began to learn English and were able to explain how they got to England. They claimed they were the only ones to have made it through. Now, let's go back a bit and provide some context to these possibly alien children. This was during a very turbulent time in British history called the Anarchy. King Stephen was on the throne, and he wasn't very keen on the Flemish immigrants that were at this time pouring into the country. This is perhaps the most logical explanation for the green children. After all, their clothing and their language was considered very strange. We'll come back to their green skin in a moment. There's even an explanation for that greenish skin. Obviously, there's lots of shades of green, from a little green to very green. It's kind of a spectrum thing. It's also one of those things that can be easily exaggerated over time. After all, the description of dark blue is a fairly recent invention, and that's why in the Bible, describing the sea as being the colour of blood, it's simply a linguistic device to describe dark water. However, the children lived with Richard de Calne for several years, during which time he weaned them onto reasonably normal food, and it's reported that their green skin did eventually fade in favour of a normal Caucasian complexion. Their time in Richard de Calne's house also made them fluent in English, and once they could talk fluently, they were asked where they came from and why their skin was green, and this is how they replied: "We are inhabitants of the land of St. Martin, who is regarded with particular veneration in the country which gave us birth. We are ignorant of how we arrived here. We only remember this, that on a certain day, when we were feeding our father's flocks in the field, we heard a great sound, such as we were now accustomed to hear at St. Edmund's, when the bells are chiming. And whilst listening to the sound in admiration, we became on a sudden, as it were, entranced, and found ourselves among you in the fields. where you were reaping. The sun does not rise upon our countrymen. Our land is little cheered by its beams. We are contented with that twilight which among you precedes the sunrise or follows the sunset. Moreover, a certain luminous country is seen not far distant from ours and divided from it by a very considerable river. Now, some folklorists have mentioned the obvious connection of the bells of Bury St Edmunds and other legends of fairy abductions, but what's different this time is that the abduction itself appears to be from fairyland to England rather than the other way around. Some years after the mysterious appearance in Suffolk of the green-skinned children, and shortly after this revelation, Richard de Calne took the boy and girl to be baptised, believing that the land from which they had travelled may be on the far side of hell, and he wanted the children to be free from any evil, especially if they're going to be living in his house, presumably. After this, the boy grew sick and eventually died, possibly from malnutrition, but it was described as an unknown malady and was more likely from some sort of infection or virus that would be easily treated today rather than the baptism, which made him ill because he's ungodly. The girl, however, did get older, and she was named Agnes and took a job, eventually marrying and integrating fully into village life. Her husband was Archdeacon of Ely, Richard Barr, and together they had at least one child, but the records are a bit unclear on the detail and how many and that sort of thing. Whatever the origins of the green-skinned children of Woolpit, their legend lives on in the people, pubs and signage of the area. So what do you think about this? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks very much for watching. Please check out the description for tons of links. Like, subscribe and ding that bell. Check me out on social media and I'll be back next time with some more magical awesomeness. But until next time, as always,
Stay magical.
Now, after some time, acclimatizing, I can't say that word.